71% of the world is covered in water, and only 2.5% of it is fresh and drinkable. Water is used for agriculture, drinking, bathing, washing clothes, and many other cultural uses. Even in the future, wars may be fought over water. So, water is a valuable resource, and if we want to preserve it, we should care about how it's being handled. Of the drinkable water on Earth, private and government-run companies filter and deliver water to the public. So our question is whether private companies are the correct way to go about water preservation, filtration, and distribution, or is a government-run system a better option?
While there are many ways that water may be privatized, one way it can be privatized is through water companies and utilities. Through the privatization of water, the companies that run them have shareholders. This is one of the key differences between privatized and government-run companies. Any major decisions that private companies make are made through the board of shareholders. Because the shareholders invested money in the company, their goal is to make as much profit as possible. This can lead to a rise in costs of water, but it also incentivizes the companies to fix problems that may occur faster. Privatized water causes the companies to be forced to be held more accountable.
No question that a private water company is going to be held more accountable to the extent that it is the owner or operator of the system than it would be otherwise. So if there's a violation under the Safe Drinking Water Act and they are the private water company is the providing regulated public water system, then it is the private water company that's going to face liability for violating the Safe Drinking Water Act. So any of those violations, whether it's of the Clean Water Act and the Raw Water Source or the Safe Drinking Water Act and the Treated Water Provision, the liability for failure to comply with the regulations would fall entirely on the private water system. So there's no question that one upside of water privatization is you end up having the legal hook to hold those companies accountable. But the same is true of a public water system. If the City of Phoenix violates the Safe Drinking Water Act, it's the City of Phoenix that's liable. The only difference is that when a private water company is held liable, its shareholders pay the price. When a public water company is held liable, it's the taxholders, the taxpayers that pay the price.
In Arizona, there are presently more than 400 private individual water systems operated by nearly 350 companies under the Arizona Corporation of Commissions jurisdiction. Of this, the majority of Arizona's water comes from underground and the Colorado River. Arizona gets about 43% of its water from underground, and they are permitted to use 2.8 million acre-feet of the Colorado River. Some may say that private water systems aren't as reliable or do not provide the same quality of water as government-run facilities, but is this true? We asked an expert on this topic, and here's what he has to say.
Well, there are water quality laws for the quality of potable water that has to be distributed. There are wastewater treatment laws, the Clean Water Act, and various water quality laws that the EPA is supposed to be implementing and regulating. There are all sorts of land use laws about watershed management that all water utilities have to abide by. Those are some examples. It's hard for me to think of others, but there probably will be. But part of the point is that public or private laws have to be met by water utilities, by electric utilities, by any utility. And whether you're a private agency or not, you don't get to skirt those laws.
When the government cannot provide safe drinking water to the public, private water companies can replace the government-run facility and provide the public with safe drinking water. An example of this is when the Philippine government did not have enough funds to supply safe drinking water to the public, and so the Manila Water Company bought out the Philippine government. Prior to Manila's water's entries in 1997, the East Zone suffered from various water problems, such as that only 26% of the area's population had access to 24-hour water supply. Since 1997, East Zone residents have significant improvements in their water and wastewater services. The distribution rate rose from 26% in 1997 to 99%. And from delivering only 440 million liters of water per day, the Manila Water Company can now deliver over 1.3 billion liters to 6.8 million residents. In this case, the Manila Water Company provided a clean and safe alternative to the previously dangerous and unsafe drinking water that the government-run water system provided.
There are examples of successful private water agencies that provide that public service of safe water and sanitation. But even then, even when there's a private agency involved, there has to be government oversight to protect the public interest. There has to be government oversight to make sure that the rates being charged are fair, or that the environment is being protected, or that profits aren't excessive.
private water systems and government water systems charge their rates differently. Government-run companies charge by how much money it costs to filter and deliver the water to you. Private water companies also do this but may charge higher rates than government-run companies because they have to charge consumers for the cost and charge an additional fee to make a profit to pay the shareholders who invested in the company. However, the rates that the private water companies charge are overseen by the government to ensure that they are not charging unreasonable prices or creating an excessive amount of profit. In some cases, government-run water facilities charge too little for water, and the costs of filtration and delivery are not covered in this situation, and a privately run company may take over to increase the rates that they are charging to consumers. In some cases, private water companies do not have proper government oversight, and the rates that are charged are too high, and consumers cannot afford to pay their water bills. This is true in a case like Senegal, where in 1996, the SARU was awarded with a contract of a $96 million loan from the World Bank in order to provide safe and clean drinking water to the public because the government couldn't afford to. As a result, many Senegalese citizens were forced to turn to untreated water systems for their water needs. The reason being is because the private water companies charged too much and the people couldn't have paid for their water. The government of South America, for instance, has to cut off supplies to over 10 million people in the last 2 years because they could not afford to pay for the newly privatized services. This problem might not have happened if there was proper government oversight of the SARU.
It's possible to do it successfully and in a way that will help marginalized or underserved communities, but only if they take appropriate preventative measures, which is it going to be a competitive bidding process for the contract? Are you going to have multiple different companies compete for that monopoly? And are you going to have governmental oversight? Are you going to have independent regulators that are going to regulate your pricing and that are going to regulate your quality? Are you going to have regular sunset provisions and review and retender so that there are incentives for the company to perform well, to meet benchmarks, because every 5 or 7 years they're going to get reviewed again and have their contract renewed?
There's no distinct problem with a private or government-operated water system, only improper regulations and oversight. A well-run private water company can provide the same quality of water as a government-run water company. And if we're looking to conserve water in the future, government systems may be a better option because private water companies have to not only charge for the cost of filtering and delivering the water, but charge more to create a profit for the company. There are pros and cons to both private and government-run water companies, and in some cases one might be better suited than the other, but at the end of the day, the quality of water that you are drinking is going to be the same no matter if it comes from a private or government-run company.